Right, welcome to this very quick crude video about my 2007 Harley Davidson VRod. This is a VRCD, so it's a night rod. It's got a 180 on the back and I want to convert it to 240. A little bit of quick history on the Harley Davidson VRod. So up until 2007 it had a narrow swing arm, a wide pulley and belt and a different compensator. In 2007, because they wanted to fit a 240 wheel, they went to a wider swinging arm, narrow pulley and belt, which apparently are as strong or even stronger than the original, and a different compensator, and slightly different spaces to eke everything out. Now, if you've got a 2006 or earlier VRod, you can fit a 240 wheel, and all you have to do is notch the brake caliper. There's plenty of instructions on the site, 1130cc, I think it's .com. That will tell you how to do that. For the 2007 bike, it's the standard internet thing. It goes through all of the questions. People going, oh, I've got this bike, how do I do this? And people go, oh, it's not this way. And then someone says, oh, that's not quite correct. You can do it this way, and blah, blah, blah. And it gets to the end, and then no one posts the final answer. So I decided to do this video to try and be the person who gives people the solution. And hopefully I've got the solution here. For me, there's 2 or 3 ways of doing it, but I think this might be the best. So in 2007, wider swinging arm, a narrow pulley, narrow belt, different compensator, right? In 2008, they went from a Imperial 1-inch axle to 25mm metric. Joy. Not quite that easy though, because they also changed the distance from the bearing registers on this side to this side, right? And that was to accommodate different bearings. Because the original 9247 Harley Davidson wheel bearings, made by INA, not by Harley Davidson obviously, were 52mm outer diameter, 21mm this way, and then 1-inch internal. So they're fairly special because they're a mix of metric and Imperial. In 2007, used the same bearing. In 2008, because of the change of diameter here, they went to a 52mm external, 15mm width, 25mm internal diameter. So the problem I've got is, do I change my axle from 1-inch to metric, or do I try and find some kind of hybrid thing? And I've decided hybrid. And the reason for this is quite simple. I want to be able to use this wheel and this wheel. When I come to tyre changes, I want to just be able to swap them over. I'm not sure if the handling will be badly affected by the 240, so I'd like to maintain the ability to swap between the two. I need to get this wheel powder coated because Harley has used this very special paint that somehow stays on for a couple of years, and then just when it's out of warranty, all the paint falls off. And mine's many years past warranty. I got it a couple of years ago, and yeah, all the paint's peeled off. And the annoying thing is, it's that sort of powder coat that's difficult to remove. So it's peeled off in places, and then in other places it's still stuck hard. And you can't really shot blast it, you can't scrape it very easily. It's going to be a real pig to get that paint off. So because of this, I want to keep my original axle, because the caliper carrier is Imperial. And if I put a metric axle on, caliper carrier will be a little bit loose, and I don't really want that. Even though it's clamped tight, it could still move a little bit. Plus also, I don't want to change my pulley bearing, and I want to keep this wheel, and I want to keep everything fairly stock. So what I did is I went on Ronnie's HD Pathfinder site, and I found all the part numbers for this wheel on 2008 after later, and I found all the part numbers for this bike and all the part numbers for the earlier bikes, and I compared them all. And what I decided to do is I bought all the spacers for a 2008 bike. right, which is the same for any Harley then from 2008 onwards, unless you've got ABS, and then it's a slightly different spacer and a slightly different bearing. This is actually an ABS bearing on one side. So, I was thinking I would have to get all of these, because these are 2008 onwards. I thought I'd have to get all of these machined out. Turns out Harley's lazy. Guess what? You wouldn't believe that a motorcycle company like Harley would be lazy. Yeah, they use the same bearing stock, so this is inch diameter, even though it was used on all the metric bikes. After 2008, it's still inch diameter, internal. Apart from this spacer, which is aluminium, and for some reason they've done metric, 25mm. So I'm going to have to machine this one out a little bit with a file and some sandpaper, clamps, so it's okay. And otherwise, these should all drop in. But this means I need this bearing. So as I say, I've managed to find a bearing that's 52 by 15 by 1 inch. It's made by NSK. There's the number, I'll stick it up. And it should mean that with all of this and this wheel, I've got a direct drop in. Now NSK are a good brand. There's lots of Chinese bearings out there that, you know, you could use, but you know, the Chinese, I don't know why they do it, but they make these bearings and they put all the effort and energy into it, and then they just miss off the last little bit of treatment that would make it good, like hardening it properly or something like that. It's infuriating because they put so much energy and effort in, and then they just can't be bothered with the last bit. I'm sure it doesn't take that much more to make a good bearing than a bad bearing. Anyhow, the bearings I found, I think they're made in Japan, but NSK is a good brand. And all I've done is, because I believe they're gearbox bearings, they're still deep groove or exactly the same, but they have slightly different grease in them and a slightly different oil seal. So I very carefully prise the oil seal, put some SKF bearing grease in, just a little bit extra, and put the bearing seal back on, just to make sure I'm okay. So those bearings are in the freezer now, cooling down, so they contract, so I can try and push them into this wheel. And hopefully, I'll get my new wheel. As you can hear, we got a big storm at the moment, so I'm not too fussed about the fact if the bike's off the road for today and tomorrow, because I ain't riding anywhere anyway. This thing, she's like a cruise liner, and you know, high winds. There's a lot of bulk of bike here, and on me, get pushed around in all this wind. So anyhow, better get on. I took this apart yesterday. Didn't do too bad with it. I've polished up my brake disc a little bit. I haven't made it very, very shiny because I can't be bothered. I've also cleaned up the compensator bell because it was really corroded. Harley never put any paint on it. I don't quite understand why they just put a piece of aluminium with no protection in that particular area, which is behind this. You know, you can't really get to it. So anyhow, I've cleaned all the corrosion off, and I've used the zinc chromate primer that you can't buy anymore because it's now illegal, because it's quite bad for your health if you use it in the wrong way. But basically it's a 2-pack etch primer. I've stuck that on the compensator. I've also stuck it on the bare aluminium on the wheel here in a couple of places. That's where the compensator and the brake disc goes on. And I'm going to spray up the compensator with some nice black paint. That should make it look a bit nicer. And yeah, put it all back together again. My brand new pulley that I bought last year, because my old pulley was knackered, I don't know what they've put on it, some kind of silver stuff, but it's all coming off. This was horrendously expensive as well, and I got it cheaper than this price. But anyhow, I'm not going to do anything with it. I'll have a look online and see what people say, but yeah, it's going on for now. So part of the news from the evening was that I measured up everything, my old spacers and everything like that, on the wheel I took off. And I found that on the old setup, I had a 21mm bearing, 145.71 long tube, another 21mm bearing, and then on the brake side, I had around about 13.8, something like that, spacer. All the pulley sides, all the same. It's all uses the same spacers and everything on the 2007, 2008 bikes. So adding that all up, it came to 201.71 millimeters. So theoretically, my new setup needs to be exactly the same, because, as I say, the pulley compensator bowl to the first bearing is all identical, and the changes were supposed to have happened in this hub. So the new setup is 15 millimeters, 152.9, 15, and then 18.61 for that little aluminium spacer that's 25 millimeters as opposed to an inch. And I sanded that out yesterday as well. Add that all up and it comes to around about 201.71. So theoretically, this is all good and it'll go back together good again. So when Harley changed these wheels, it seems apparent to me that they changed the dimensions from the pulley bearing and pulley spacer along. So they didn't change anything on the spacers, on the spacer, the pulley and the bearing, and then the spacer. That's all remained identical. All of the changes were from the hub onwards across to the other side. So anyhow, that's all worked out pretty good. I'm fairly happy with that. So I'm just going to paint a bit of black paint on and then hopefully get this all reassembled today. And it's nicer weather out there, so I might get to give her a little test, which would be nice. And what I'll do at the end of this video, and probably done it already in places, is I will stick all the dimensions of the various spacers down, and part numbers and bearing numbers. That way, if you've got a 2006 bike and you know you need a certain type of spacer, you'll be able to see if Harley just make one, you can just get one off the shelf then, rather than having one machined up. If you're anything like me, there's no machinists around here. The couple I do know are quite expensive. You know, and if I can just, even a Harley part, if I can just get it off the shelf, it saves driving in cars, going and getting stuff done, and trying to explain to someone and having them do it wrong. You know, it's far more easier if I can just get it off the shelf. So anyhow, I'll do all that later in the video. Here's the old wheel. You can see the paint coming off there. This is a side-by-side of the old wheel alongside the new set wheel, and yeah, it just looks so much more cool, doesn't it? It really does. Look at the size of that. Also, you can see that the pulley is nice and inside the width of the wheel, and the brake caliper is right inside. It just looks so much better. And that's the finished product, and yeah, I'm really happy.